I was 8 years old when I got my first glimpse of just how fast life can change. That night, I was giddy with excitement. I had just gotten home from a play with my Grandma Shirley, my Aunt June, my cousin Jamie, and my mom. Jamie was only 4, and I adored her. That night felt like magic. But the magic didn't last. I woke up in the middle of the night to chaos. My parents were crying, screaming, and rushing to get dressed. My other grandma came over in the middle of the night to watch my brother and me while my parents left. They said they had an emergency. It wasn't until later that I found out what happened. My uncle had come home from his late night shift to find my Aunt June and little Jamie asleep in bed, but something was wrong. Aunt June had suffered a grand mal seizure in her sleep, and she didn't survive. She had suffocated right next to her baby girl. My uncle walked into a nightmare that no one should ever have to face. That was my first experience with tragic, unexpected death, and it hit close. My cousins Jonathan and Joshua lost their mom. We were all so young. That grief pulled us closer together, and it bonded us in ways that words can't really capture. A few years later, my family moved out of state. I was a little homesick, and my uncle found out. He stepped in. He became my pen pal. This man who had just lost his wife saw that his niece needed some comfort, and he gave it freely. We exchanged silly letters and cards, and I still remember putting them all together for my 6th grade school project on how to comfort others when they're hurting. That's who my uncle was, a comforter. Even while he was grieving, he gave. Fast forward many years, I went to war. You know my story. If you don't, go back to episode 56. But when I came home, I got married 2 weeks later, and I chose Jamie, now all grown up, to be my maid of honor. We'd grown so close, and I was excited for the years ahead and this new season. But trauma came knocking again. One night I got a call from my mom. She was doing a travel nurse assignment in Bangor, Maine, so it was 1:30 her time. Her voice was hysterical. I couldn't even understand her until finally, through the sobs, Jamie is gone. She had died in a tragic dirt biking accident during our family's annual camping trip, one hosted by my uncle every year. I wasn't there this time, but I had been to so many of those trips before. All I could think about was my uncle. First his wife, now his baby girl, and my cousins, those boys I grew up calling my brothers, had to bury their sister after already living through the heartbreak of losing their mom. Over the years, my uncle and I grew closer. We talked late nights, both of us wrestling with PTSD. We used humor as our survival tool, through cheesy jokes back and forth to dull the sting of darkness that we both carried. He always had a special place in my heart, and I know that I had one in his. My uncle's life was marked by an unthinkable amount of pain and tragedy, and yet he kept going. He clung to Jesus. He served people. He loved hard, but he also struggled like so many of us do. Trauma changes how we cope, and not always in healthy ways. Over time, the survival mechanisms that once helped him began to hurt him. His health declined, some things that he couldn't control, others, if we're being honest, he might have been able to control a little bit more. But this isn't about blame, this is about truth. We lost my Uncle Kerry just a few days ago after a 5-week fight with a heart infection. And as I sat with my grief, what I kept coming back to was this. My uncle would want me to say this. Put your hope in Christ. Lean not on your own understanding. Fight those unhealthy coping mechanisms that try to seduce you when the pain feels unbearable. And love while you can. I know he loved Jesus. I know he's with his maker now. And I know that despite all the tragedy, his life, his story still speaks. So today, as we kick off this episode, I invite you into that tension, the reality of trauma, the seduction of unhealthy coping, and the unrelenting hope that we can choose to fight for anyways.
Welcome to the Mental Health Janitors, where we help you clean up the mess in your head. I'm your host, Sergeant Q, and with me as always, Doc Jess.
Welcome. Thanks for being here, you guys.
Wow, Jess, that's a really powerful and raw story you were still walking through that. That happened this weekend, and you're just still walking through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Super raw. And I mean, as you as I reflect on the story and I think back on my life, I experienced my first death tragedy of somebody I loved and I was close to at 8, with my Aunt June. And then as I reference back to my time at war, in episode, what I said 56, but I think it's 52. Episode 52, where I read a little bit about my time of war. I'll be the first to admit that I've had quite a bit of tragedy and loss in my life, and quite a bit of negative coping skills in my life as well. And so that's another thing that my uncle and I connected with on a constant basis, both relating to one another and encouraging each other to try to grow through and grow out of those negative coping skills. And some of them he would get some relief from and learn better ways to cope with his incomprehensible pain. And some of them took over his life during different seasons of his life. And, just if we're being honest, led to a lot of health problems in his life and some dysfunction. And anybody that, would actually in an unbiased way take a look at his life and what he had to go through would have a little bit naturally more grace for somebody like that. Nobody, no parent should ever have to bury a child, but a wife and a child, he had a hard life. And
I asked Jess before he came in, she was telling us this story and what she was walking through. And I said, are you sure you want to do this? You want to go in there and open this up with it being so raw? And she said, that's what touches people. She goes, even if I'm a mess, we're still going to do it. I was like, okay, let's do it. So this is real life. You guys hear us talk all the time about these things. And sometimes it can be easy to think that we're just far removed from it, but we're not. We're walking through it every single day, just like you are. And this is one of those moments that you get to see on camera. And Jess is right. It would be disingenuous for us not to walk through these things when we're experiencing them. So yeah, Jess, this is raw and it's hard. And so thanks for sharing that, not just with me, but with all of them.
Yeah.
Most of you, when you have this pain and this hurt, you retreat back inside yourself and you don't want to share. You don't want to talk about it. You want to stay away from people. But that's not where growth happens. Growth happens when we're uncomfortable and we choose to do the hard things anyway. That's where growth happens. And so all of those times you shrink away from fear, you shrink away from that discomfort, you're choosing not to grow. And you'll wonder why you continue to repeat the same patterns over and over and over again. This always happens to me. I always pick the wrong guy. I always get terminated from my job. I always fill in the blank. It's because when those hard times come, you don't fight through them, you retreat. And so you have to continue fighting the same battles time and time and time again. And so I know that's speaking to somebody out there, because in this story, in this moment, you find yourself with a choice to fight through the pain and discomfort, or to do what you've always done and retreat back and shrink from fear. So I just want to encourage you today to take that first step, have that first conversation with a friend, a family member, a therapist, and begin fighting for your own mental health. It's what I do. It's what Jess is doing right now.
It's so beautiful that you bring that up, Aaron, because we lost my uncle at 1:30 in the morning, and then I had to just pack my bags and go to our annual youth group church retreat. And It's not a prideful thing. I do handle death very different than other people because of the amount that I've had to experience. And
Well, not just the amount, but your choice to grow through it instead of retreat from it. That's why you handle things differently, because you've made a conscious choice to learn how to process through those things and heal from them instead of shrink away like so many people do.
I think that sounds really good, and I really love that you think that about me. And I also know there's a part of it like that is a rewiring of my brain, because when I was in Iraq and we lost somebody, we didn't have time to grieve properly and lean into that. We had to take care of the next tragedy, and then the next tragedy, and then the next tragedy, to where my brain genuinely, I believe, is rewired to just handle death a little differently because of those hardships. But so I get what you're saying, and I appreciate that, and I do think there's some of that involved. Yes.
Right, but that's just one part of it. The other part is this growth part that's happening right now.
Okay.
Because most people wouldn't be talking about this in such a public forum.
Okay, I get you. Sure. But what I think is so beautiful is that we just came off the youth retreat, and our theme was "We Rise" from Micah 7:8, and each sermon, each preacher was preaching on a different part. It was really cute. It was we rise, and our special walk-on was Mr. Yeast instead of Mr. Beast.
I have some problems with that, but okay.
We all did, okay? But it was funny, and they're mostly kids, so they don't get it. Anyways, all those sermons were...
No, I just meant Mr. Beast. He's like the Antichrist.
Oh, sure. Okay. So...
if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. It's really funny.
It's fun. So all those sermons were about, right? Like, how do you make bread? You knead it. You stretch it. It goes through the fire. And how do we go through the fire as Christians? And you bringing that up, right, just reminds me that, like, what a beautiful way for me to walk into this, like, moment of grief for me, right? It was for the kids, absolutely, but it was for me too, to reinforce I'm doing it right. I'm walking through the fire right. I'm going to allow the Lord to teach me how to be stronger through this, and how to be an example and a testimony to other people, that we can walk through hardships with joy, with peace, and with a sound mind if we do it right, and if we sit with being uncomfortable. And all the sermons, I'm like taking notes, like way more than the kids. I'm like, this is so good. The kids are like, what is wrong with Jessica? She's over there like, yeah, but it's maybe they'll watch this now and maybe they'll understand a little better. But yeah, it's all about just the bottom line is we're going to go through tragedy. We're going to go through hardships. People are going to die. Literally.
Yeah.
1 out of 1 people die, except for Enoch and Elijah. Okay. Other than that, somebody is going to die in your life. And without coming across too judgmental, like, not everybody who dies in your life were you best friends with, and do you need to get all this attention for, oh my gosh, like, you know those people? Should we cut this?
No, it's good. It's good. Because I was really debating on whether or not to bring this up. And so when you said it, I'm just like, okay, here we go. We're going 100 miles an hour, no helmet right here. Yes, there are some people who have experienced trauma in their life. So I see two sides of it. They experience some trauma. So then anything else that happens, they take that on as if it's their personal crusade. And I just, it bothers me to know. And so I see it with people who've had some trauma, pretty bad. And then they just take on everybody else's as like this crusader, or they haven't had anything really go wrong in their life. So they somehow feel like they need to protect everybody else from every single injustice that happens. And I see this usually the same type of person doing this. They're doing the same activities, but they're on different ends of the spectrum. They're definitely on the extreme of both sides. So let's talk about the one who's had trauma And then anything that happens, they take that on as like it's happening to them, and they have to have some sort of larger than life emotional outburst. We see these people at political rallies all the time, where because somebody got elected or somebody said something, that all of a sudden the world is going to end, and they just have this complete and utter meltdown over nothing that really affects their life. Okay. The president getting voted into office doesn't affect your day-to-day life on a holistic, American level. Yes. With economy and different laws and things like that. Yes. But in your day-to-day operations, it doesn't affect most people, but they take it on as if this is some sort of personal burden they have to bear every single day. And I see these people out there taking on every single cause. And it's not just one. It's these type of people take on every single cause. It doesn't matter what it is. It's the fruit basket of wrongs that are happening in the world, whether it's Palestine and Israel, whether it's North and South Korea, whether it's gender equality, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's the president, whether it's politics. It doesn't matter if it's indigenous women being kidnapped and murdered. It doesn't matter what it is. They have to take this on as their personal crusade. And I don't know exactly why they do that. And so that's on the far side where they live in that like victim mentality.
Victim and heroism at the same time.
Yeah, it's like they feel like they
are the victim of everything wrong.
Yes.
So they have to fight for everything.
Everything. And it just burns out all of their friends and their family. I've watched it destroy their businesses. And I try to coach them as business coach, like, hey, these can be your personal feelings, but when you put them publicly, well, it's my personal Facebook. Yeah, but you put them public. That affects your business. You wonder why you're losing relationships, why you can't maintain friendships, why your business has gone bankrupt, why everybody in your town doesn't like you. You wonder why these things happen. You keep repeating these patterns because they take that trauma on. Yeah. And I wasn't going to bring it up.
And let's be clear, it happens on both sides.
I was just going to say.
It happens on both sides.
It doesn't matter what political side you fall on.
Yes.
We're talking about the extreme on both sides.
Yeah.
And they seem to be the loudest members of our society. So we see this happen on both sides, typically of the political spectrum, the far left and the far right. These are not the majority of our population, not even close. These are the very small minority. But the problem is they're the ones who have the biggest emotional outbursts. And so it makes it feel like there's more of them than there really are. They are the ones who go viral. They've even dubbed a term for these types of people, which would be the Karen. Now that's somebody who is going after somebody and being loud and obnoxious, but that's the same type of person that's the Karen, is the same one that's taking on the injustice of the world. Like they've got to somehow solve it. I had this experience. I literally had this experience where I had a very liberal white woman trying to tell me, a Hispanic, how I should feel about Trump's immigration policy. That she's all for protecting immigrants and their rights and all of these things. And at the same time, she wants to tell me how I should feel and how I should act regarding these immigration policies. Like this poor Mexican doesn't know how to think for himself, and therefore I must tell him about the great injustice being done to his people. I was like, what have you actually done to help my people? Like, I go to Mexico every year. I build homes for the homeless. I dig wells. I build infrastructure in third world countries. I've got a pretty good world view, and not a view from my TikTok screen on what I think should be happening, and I'm just getting confirmation bias. No, I actually go to these places. So all these people who want to raise awareness and march and say they're standing up for the immigrant, they're actually not investing any time or money into that community to actually raise them up. It just becomes this self-promoting stage that they put themselves on. And then when anybody speaks out against them, even the person that they're trying to help says, no, that's not right. They somehow feel like they have moral superiority to tell you how you're wrong and how you should feel about these things. It's these type of people that are the loudest and most obnoxious. And it makes it really difficult for the rest of us. And I know I'm pushing some of your buttons right now because some of you are like, yes, I know that person. And other people, you are that person. And now you're really offended. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. My husband gets it a lot being a black man. And if anybody knows my husband, he'll have a conversation with you, but he goes against a lot of the things that these puffed what do you call it?
Self-promoting.
Self-promoting.
What they want to do is they want to create this victim and say, oh, you're a victim and everything that's gone wrong in your life is because of somebody else. Now, that does two things. One, it takes all the responsibility off of the individual to actually do better and try to grow. It takes all the responsibility off of them if they can just blame it on some devil out there that's doing them wrong. But the other side of that, it really gives that person who's spewing that stuff, it gives them a platform, and that becomes their whole career. Their whole identity is spreading this hate of, oh, it's not your fault that all these things happen to you, it's somebody else's, and put that blame onto somebody else. This has become a really big money-making machine. We see this. Al Sharpton is probably one of the biggest at doing this, and Jesse Jackson, both of those guys are really good at making a lot of money telling you that somebody else is causing all your problems. And we see it in politics, but those two are probably the ones who really pioneered this type of behavior. And it's sickening and it's gross. And you don't have to stand for it. The reason you right now, you are at minimum 50% of every single problem that you have, and probably closer to 70% if you're being honest.
Yeah.
And that goes for me and everybody else. Mm-hmm. But it's easier to just blame somebody than to take personal responsibility, reflect on what I did wrong, and make changes. And I see that is so prevalent in our society today. And that goes right back to what you were talking about, Jess.
Right. And I want to make it clear that it's not an either or, it's a both and. And what I mean by that what's one of my favorite things is if we see injustice happening, I'm the first one to stand up and fight for the underdog and fight for the person who's getting picked on and fight for the one who's having injustice. I'm going to stand up. Anybody who knows me knows I'm going to stand up and say something. While at the same time, I'm going to tell the person who's blaming their whole life as being a victim and needing, extra help and all these things and being stuck in their lifestyle. Hey, I love you. And let's get going here. My husband's such a beautiful example to me, right? As he was one of the first kids in one of the Kent elementaries that was black. And he's 47 almost now. And so people don't realize now, they look around at Kent and it's like a plethora of all different colors. But back then it wasn't. And he was the only black kid in his school in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And he got called the N-word every day at school, every day. And he'd fight these kids after school. My husband has been in thousands of fights. Look at his face. Look at his knuckles. Look at his... he has scars upon scars. And he went home and his dad, who is black from Louisiana, said, son, they are repeating what they're hearing their parents say at home. They don't know any difference. Try something different. Mm-hmm. Try being their friends. One day he said, hey, you want to be my friend? I like the same things you like. And the kid was like, yeah, because they fought. My husband won, of course. No. And he was like, after he won, like, let's just be friends, man. That summer they rode dirt bikes from Kent to Ravensdale. They camped out there as kids in 6th grade. They became such good friends. And you know what my husband did? He broke down those walls, and those kids realized they didn't have to have the same mentality as their parents. And who knows what kind of change that did for those white kids' generation, right? And I'm not saying, please hear me, please, please, please. I'm not saying to sit and take abuse. No. And I'm saying, what am I saying, Aaron?
So here's the thing. Here's what I see people do. They get overwhelmed, and this becomes their whole identity, is taking on the cause of everybody else. Like, if you have a cause, take on that cause. Great. And put all your energy into that one thing. But what I see people doing is taking on every single cause that comes their way. It's like flavor of the month. Next month, it's going to be crimes against indigenous people. The next month, it's going to be crimes against Mexicans. Next month is going to be crimes against black people. It's just every single piece of injustice they can find. They want to wave that banner, be part of that group. And that has got to be so mentally taxing to just see the world through that victim lens all the time. I have a passion for mental health. And so that's what I do. I focus 100% of my time on mental health. And I've really focused on helping business owners take this on because I can 10x my impact by investing in other leaders. That's why I'm in teaching this in the business space, but it still goes back to the core of mental health. There's a lot of things that I would like to see changed, abortion rights and different things like that, but I'm not going out there rallying. I'm not going out there protesting. I don't have the mental capability to take that on as well because I've already dedicated myself to focusing on one cause. And what happens is when you spread yourself too thin, you get burned out. And then you start having these really over-the-top emotional experiences and melting down and becoming viral videos. And we all know, in your mind right now, you're thinking of the lady with the beanie cap on her knees, screaming at the top of her lungs when Trump got elected the first time. Mm-hmm. Like, these people are melting down because they take on every single cause. If you would here's two things that's going to happen. If you focus in on what God called you to focus on, two things are going to happen. One, you're going to get mental clarity because you're not going to feel overwhelmed and overburdened by every injustice in the world. And number two, you're actually going to start making impact because if you focused all of your energy onto that one thing, you're going to start actually making impact and making improvement in that area that you care about. But if you have 100% of your time and you give 1% to 100 things, you're never going to make a difference. But if you can put 100% of that time on one thing, you're going to start moving the ball forward. I mean, just look at me as an example. Mental health is my thing. And if you look at all the awards, all the accolades, all the businesses, all the things that I've done, it all revolves around that. I've made some serious impact in the world when it comes to mental health. But I don't spread myself into all these different areas because I know I will not be effective. And so that's my advice to you. If you're one of these people that feels like they have to take on the world for injustice, just pick one, man. Just pick one thing. You're going to be so much happier. You're going to make better effect on target, and you're not going to wear out your friends and family because they look at you and it's flavor of the month. It's every day or every month or every week, whatever the new tragedy thing is, you're taking that on, and they're so burned out with it. They're just burned out.
Yeah, I had a recent client situation where, and this is where I want to piggyback on that and challenge you also in addition to that is check your heart. Okay, so I had a client who, a couple's clients, and the wife is really uncomfortable with how demonstrative her partner is on social media about, this is what I'm saying, it's on both sides, on the far right side, and using his platform to speak his truth, right? And as we unpack, and this is one thing that's really great about counseling, is as we unpack what is your goal, right? And we unpacked with a certain kind of counseling and with a professional who knows how to ask certain questions. The end goal was for him to prove that he was right. Mm. And that's not going to win anybody over. And so if your goal is to prove that you're right, you're going to push people away. You're not going to get any honor or win anybody over. If your goal is, if I believe this is so true, my goal is to get other people to see that this is true. And being demonstrative and being mean and being insensitive doesn't help that. Okay, so let me give you an example. If his purpose is to prove that he's right in regards to, let's say, this, what's the new thing that they're cutting all the costs? Doge. If he's convinced that this is great and this is wonderful, like I'm just sharing his story, right? Like at the end of the day, if you're pushing to be right and for other people to say, yeah, you were right, you haven't won anybody over. If your intention, if your heart condition is, hey, you guys, like, let's talk about this because I want you to see where I'm coming from and I want you to understand that there are some good things coming from this. You want, if you believe that's your truth, that's truth, you want them to believe that that's true. And coming at aggressively just to prove that you're right doesn't win anybody over. And so let's taper that back to scripture, okay? Kindness. God's kindness leads us to repentance, not his wrath, not his judgment. Now that's a part of it, but what leads us to repentance is his kindness. And what's going to lead people to see your point of view is kindness. It's, hey, I want to have this conversation so I can understand where you're coming from, and hopefully you can understand where I'm coming from so that we can, in love, say, you know what, I don't agree with that, and I still love you. Does that make sense?
It does. I look at it. I had an experience with somebody that I know, another business owner, and they were making some really with some photos, number one, that were completely doctored and not actually true. They had posted some photos comparing the deportation to the Holocaust. And they put these two photos up, one of the Holocaust and one of this prison that they were claiming was a prison here in the US where we're holding all of these immigrants, which was not true. The image was from some prison in Venezuela that we have nothing to do with, number one. So that I pointed out as not being right. But of course, that didn't stop this person. This just amplified their need to be vindicated that this is true and this is what's happening. And then I went on to explain, like, hey, when you compare the Holocaust, which is a horrible thing that happened to the Jewish people, to people being deported and sent back to their own countries, those are not the same thing. And then I started getting attacked. And then I said, look, let me share with you, this is not just my opinion. Almost every single Jewish organization has come out and spoke against this comparison because it's simply not true. And what it does is it detracts from the actual horrific events of the Holocaust when you compare these two things. So if you don't like Trump, you don't like what's happening, great, say that. But don't compare it to some huge atrocity that was done to the Jewish people. Almost every single Jewish organization has come out and spoke against this. Don't do that. But then that's when the real firestorm erupted, and they came after me for I got called a racist. I'm like, wait, hold on. I'm the Mexican guy, the only Mexican guy who travels to Mexico and builds infrastructure. The only Mexican guy here that you know
who spends
is
his
the
own
racist
money, thousands of dollars to help the Mexican community.
Yes. I'm the racist, but that's what happens because they let their emotions override logic. And so if this person had thought about it for more than 2 seconds, they would have recognized that. But they didn't because their emotions took over and they just start lambasting me in the comments. And I just thought, like, wow, this is not going to end well for you. And then I private messaged the person and let them know, like, hey, this is the type of behavior. This is why your business is not doing well. This is why you got run out of town in the last small town you were in. This is why your relationships don't last. This is why nobody interacts with you in the business sector that we're a part of. This is why right here. But of course, even the private message didn't help this person see it. They're so stuck in this mentality that they can't see past it. And so I know this position. I've been there myself when it came to being homeless and struggling with PTSD. And in the midst of that, I blamed everybody else. I took no responsibility.
I did too.
I wanted to fight for every single cause, because I felt like I had injustice done to me. So then I wanted to fight for 2A. I wanted to fight for abortion. I wanted to fight for anything that happened. I just wanted to fight. And it got me nowhere. It lost me relationships, friends, jobs. So when I'm telling this person, it's not like I'm coming from a place of, hey, you better do this and get it right. I'm like, hey, I was there.
Yeah.
And this is what I was doing. And it caused me a lot of grief. And you're doing the same thing. That's why I recognize it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this person still didn't see it. So I just told him, like, look, I'm going to disengage with you because you're not willing to see this stuff yet. So I'm just going to completely disengage. And then they sent me 2 or 3 more messages, which I didn't even open. I didn't even read because I can only do so much to help that person.
Right.
So 2 things. Number 1, if you have somebody like that in your life, just disengage. They're not ready to understand. They're not ready to see. So nothing you say is going to matter because they're stuck in that emotional mindset. And so when they're stuck in an emotional mindset, the rational part of the cognitive thought process is gone. It doesn't even exist. All that exists is emotion, and anything that you say, they see as a personal attack against their life. That's what's happening because they're having that emotional response.
Yeah.
And the amygdala is kicking in, cortisol, adrenaline.
Yeah.
They're probably sitting there shaking as they're typing it out to you. Like this is what's happening in their mind.
Yeah.
So the more you try to help them, you're actually hurting them because you're pushing them farther down into that.
Yeah.
So I just completely disengage and I just leave it alone. And I've had times where people have come back to me and said, hey, I'm really sorry. Like I was way out of line.
Yeah.
I don't even know why I said that stuff.
Yeah.
I understand. I know why, because they had no logic. No cognitive thought process. And so the other side of it is if you are that person and you've done that with these relationships, just own it, man, and just apologize and try and do better.
Right. And that's what I was going to pick. Like, there's been times that I've heard something and I got so, right. And a lot of the times these triggers, just a little psychoeducation side note, a lot of the times these triggers that really get you amped up are correlated with a core value, right? So a core values are things like family over everything. You should have the best work ethic. A core value could be
honesty, integrity.
Honesty, integrity, loyalty. There's you can Google what are common core values, right? And so like a core value a lot of people have is blood is thicker than water, right? Like family is everything. And for me, that's not necessarily a core value because family has brought a lot more dysfunction than peace, and it's okay to love from a distance, but I don't look down on people who have a core value if that's their core value, and that's honorable and that's fine and that's good. It's just not mine. One of my core values is the underdog or the victim so if I see a Down syndrome kid getting kicked at recess, ooh, that's my core value. Mama bear comes out, and that's when my emotions overtake my logic, and I do stupid things when that core value triggers me. And so, right, G.I. Joe, half the battle is knowing. Understand and know your core values so then you can connect them to your triggers so that when I see the Down syndrome kid getting kicked, I'm not mama bear acting crazy. I can say this is a core value. This is triggering me. What is the best course of action to help stand up for this kid with Down syndrome getting kicked? That's going to end well for everyone. But I haven't always done that. I haven't always known my core values and what they're attached to with triggers. And so I've made a lot of really big mistakes in my life that I have become completely emotionally involved with it. And I've had to say, I'm so sorry. I should have never done that, and make reconciliation. And that takes humility, and it takes a repentance, and it takes the other person to love you enough to say, you know what? I love you. Thank you for admitting that. Let's grow and learn from this together. And so again, we're not coming at you from a don't do that because we're self-righteous. We're coming, don't do that because we've done it and it hurts us. So some people go out and start a movement with it telling them in their head, I'm doing a good thing, but even though essentially from their heart of hearts, they're thinking they're doing a good thing.
And then they're burning down a federal building.
And then
because that's an unhealthy coping mechanism.
Yes, it is. It is. And or maybe your unhealthy coping mechanism is you had a father who abused you or was neglectful, and so you're looking for fulfillment in men. Or maybe your negative coping mechanism is self-medicating with alcohol or weed or drugs. Maybe your negative coping mechanism is avoidance, just going and becoming a hobbit. Hobbit? Is it a hobbit?
Hermit.
A hermit. A hermit.
Hobbits
right?
were very social people.
Were they? I don't know anything about hobbits, but
so I want to Shire.
Yeah, I want to challenge you today if you're watching, whether you've been a little offended, like you're welcome to let us know. And maybe there's something we could have said softer or easier. And I'm not going to speak for him, but I'm always open to some conversation about maybe I could do something better, because I never want to be the person who's like, nope, I did everything right, and just go sit in your feelings by yourself. Like I want to hear how I could possibly do things better. Now I'm not going to change my life to cater to feelings. I'm not going to do that. But there are some things over the span of time that I have done wrong. I've gotten the feedback it was done wrong, and I changed it, and it's made me a better person for it. And so if you were offended, go ahead, let us know in a loving way, please, because I'm asking you in a loving way. But I'm going to ask you and challenge you to look internally. What are maybe some of my negative coping skills, and can they be a burden to my family? That's what I'm going to ask today. When I go back to the story of my uncle and all the wonderful things he overcame and used his life for, to serve me as a little girl, and he was there for a lot of other parents that lost a child. And so he did use his trauma for good, but in that he also allowed negative coping mechanisms to creep into his life as well. And all of his family, well, even though it's hard to say, it did create some burdens on our lives because he wasn't able to overcome those negative coping mechanisms. And so I ask you today, smoking, drinking, unhealthy eating, being promiscuous, not getting counseling because it's too scary, whatever it is, ask yourself, is this going to burden my family someday? Because at your funeral, you want people to say, this person overcame, this person was a blessing, this person chose to go through the fire and be better for it. And everybody wants to be talked about like that at their funeral. And we can say a lot of that stuff about my uncle, and we could have said more. Okay? And we can't do everything. We can't be perfect. Focus on the positive, but also be open to the reality that maybe you have some negative coping skills that while you are still living, you can work on. Does that make sense?
It does. Here at the Mental Health Janitors, we like to do 3 things: educate, empower, and encourage you on your mental health journey. For the Mental Health Janitors, I'm Sergeant Q.
I'm Doc Jess.
And we're out.